Matthew Boyle is Washington political reporter for Breitbart News Network. Good morning. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you for me.
Let's begin with some of the basics. What is the mission of Breitbart News?
So what we're trying to do in this very intense election cycle and everything that's going on in Congress on Capitol Hill is we are trying to get more information about what's happening on the election, on the campaign trail and in Congress out to more people across the United States.
And how are you doing?
We're doing pretty well, I think. I think we've built a pretty successful operation. We've got a dozen or so reporters on the campaign trail in Congress. They kind of split their time between both. We keep building our operation out. We're breaking bigger and bigger stories. We're getting exclusive interviews with lots of the different presidential candidates and really driving the conversation, I think. Your
boss, Steve Bannon, the subject of the cover story for Bloomberg Business Week, The Vast Right-Wing Conspirator. And the story is titled, Meet Steve Bannon, America's Most Dangerous Political Operative. Is he an operative or is he a journalist?
Well, I think, look, I think Bloomberg Business Week would call him an operative. They did. I think what we do is journalism. We're operatives in the world of journalism. What we're doing is we're going out there and getting more and more information out to the American people about all of these different stories that the rest of the media is not covering. So we're covering things like the immigration crisis in the United States. We broke the border crisis. Our Texas bureau chief, Brandon Darby, was the one who first got the pictures, the photographs of the children that were being kept in DHS facilities last summer. We're the ones that got that story out there. If we didn't cover that stuff, nobody would have. And there's plenty of other examples like that. We were the first ones to take Donald Trump seriously as a presidential candidate. Clearly, he's now 3 months in and is at polls, continues to be at the top of the polls. We are the first ones to go and take the story of what's happened in the House leadership seriously with regard to the Speaker of the House, who John Boehner has announced his resignation. In addition to that, right the day after John Boehner announced his resignation, we were the first ones to report 2 weeks ahead of this actually happening that Kevin McCarthy, the majority leader, was not a shoo-in for the House speakership race. Obviously, 2 weeks later, after our story, Kevin McCarthy dropped out of the speakership race.
Well, let me follow up on Hillary Clinton, because this week she is scheduled to testify before the House Select Committee on Benghazi. We'll have live coverage of that hearing this Thursday morning. But in the piece, Steve Bannon says her troubles, Hillary Clinton troubles, are not going away. We've got 2 more waves of stuff on Clinton corruption, says Steve Bannon, including a focus on how the donors highlighted in the book Clinton Cash violated many of the principles that liberals hold dear. You look at what she's done on the Colombian rainforest, look at the arms merchants, the warlords, the human trafficking. If you take anything that the left professes to be a cornerstone value, the Clintons have basically played them for fools. They've enriched themselves while playing up the worst cast of characters in the world.
Well, certainly. I mean, if you look at the details of what has come out in the book Clinton Cash, which, by the way, has been covered by everybody from Bloomberg to the New York Times to many other different outlets have covered and furthered the story on their own. You look at the cast of characters that are around the Clintons, and it certainly is troubling relationships that they've had. What we're trying to do is get more information about that stuff out to the American people. So through our friends over at Government Accountability Institute, which is one of our partner organizations run by Peter Schweitzer, as well as through Breitbart, and any ways that we can get more information out to more people about what's happening in the relationships that the Clinton Foundation has with various troubling characters around the world. I mean, and by the way, you look at some of these different donors and world leaders that they're associating with, the Sultan of Brunei, the Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, he's a convicted sex offender. These are serious questions. I mean, she's a presidential candidate. She has to answer for this stuff.
And just so we can draw the connections, you mentioned Peter Schweitzer, who's the author of Clinton Cash, and there's a close relationship between your boss,
Oh,
and Peter
absolutely.
Schweitzer.
Yeah, and it's not a secret. Peter's a senior editor at Breitbart, as well as the president of Government Accountability Institute. We're not hiding anything. One of the things, I mean, we're proud of that relationship, and Peter's done a phenomenal job at putting together deep research. And the Bloomberg article that you've mentioned walks through how he goes about getting the information. He's worked extensively on what's essentially called the dark web, searching through the parts of the internet that are not easily findable on search engines. And he works very hard to go and get this information about these different connections and then present it to the public. We're not editorializing, we're just presenting the facts.
I love this picture, so I want you to comment on it. It looks like you're in a dining room in a very opulent house somewhere in Washington, D.C. Is this where you work?
Yeah, so our office is right behind the Supreme Court. It's a townhouse. Andrew Breitbart first leased it back when he was still alive, our founder of our website. He passed away in 2012. But we've kind of carried on his mission and what he's been trying to do. And so we actually call the townhouse that we work in, it's literally right behind the Supreme Court, we call it the embassy because of the fact that most Americans, and we've called it that for 3 years now since 2012, that most Americans around the country view Washington, D.C. as foreign to them. And so we jokingly call it the embassy. It's a name that's stuck.
And this is the cover story from Bloomberg Business Week earlier this month. All of Breitbart's children, by the way, as you indicated, he passed away in 2012. And one of the last events that we covered with him here in Washington, D.C. was in 2011. Here's Andrew Breitbart.
So anyway, everything I needed to learn, I learned during the Clinton era. Everything. As the way that they consorted together, the way that they literally used private detectives and leaked the information to the Washington Post and the New York Times, and they were like, oh, Henry Hyatt had an affair in 1954, and that's relevant. Are you kidding me? And then I remember when they got down to the nitty-gritty, they're like, wow, there's stuff that even Salon.com won't even publish. They leaked the stuff to Larry Flynt, and the White House was forced to go, hey, did you happen to see the press conference from that great publisher, from that great movie, The People versus Larry Flynt, that free speech, icon? He created the Flint Report, and he went after anyone and everything on everything that their private detectives leaked. And I said, holy mackerel, the collusion between the mainstream media, the objectively neutral mainstream media, and the Democratic Party is so nasty. Somebody has to stand up to this, and it can't just be AM talk radio and blogs saying the media is biased. We have to stand up and report the truths that are not reported by this group of people.
That was Andrew Breitbart back in 2011, and he died less than a year later.
Yeah, no, Andrew, our founder, really kind of laid out the vision for what we're doing. He, one of the goals we have is not just combating bias in the rest of the media, and the bias certainly exists there. I mean, there's many instances in which that's the case, and it's not just a pro-Democrat or pro-liberal bias. It's a pro-establishment. It's a pro-Washington establishment bias. But Andrew's vision was also that we would start to provide original reporting so that we're not just combating the media, but we are starting to replace them.
This is not going to come as a surprise from the Pew Research Center looking at what they call the political polarization and media habits, but saying that when it comes to getting news about politics and government, liberals and conservatives inhabit different worlds. My question, is this healthy for our democracy?
I think it is. I know there's a lot of people in the permanent political class here in Washington, D.C. who are not happy with the fact that there are more a diversity of media outlets out there that are providing more information to people. But I do think that having multiple outlets out there from which people can choose is healthy, because what we're able to do, and again, we're not trying to put an editorial spin on anything that we're doing. We cite all of our sources. It's all publicly available. People can choose to believe it or not, but one of the things that having more outlets out there does is it helps prevent certain power figures in Washington from keeping information